How's it going, everyone? This is the Anime Man. We all like video games, right? Ooh, tough crowd. But seriously though, the one thing that I find really cool among the many things that I find cool about us, the otaku community, is that we're all into all sorts of other nerdy shit as well. Anime and manga, of course, but other stuff like games, comics, hentai, you know, all the good art. And I think it's because of that we tend to see a lot of cross-promotional material, namely video games to anime. I don't know if it's just me, but we've been seeing a somewhat rapid increase of these video game titles that have been turned into an anime, or sometimes vice versa. And yes, while I can go and nitpick each individual video game to anime adaptation and tell you if it's good or bad, and anyone can tell you if a video game adaptation to an anime is good or bad, I just wanted to ask myself the question, why? Why are there so many video game anime adaptations? And at the end of the day, do they even matter? I'm sure you've all seen the title of this video, so you know exactly what kind of question I'm about to say to the camera and to your faces. What's the point of video game based anime? Well, in order to get to the bottom of that seemingly arbitrary question that supposedly has no direct answer, we have to go all the way back to the first ever video game to anime adaptation, namely 1986's Super Mario Bros. Anime. Super Mario Bros. The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach is often credited as not only being one of the first video game based anime ever created, but the first video game based film ever created. Yes, I know a lot of you will probably be saying, oh, but the Super Mario Bros. Live action was technically the first video game movie. Well, this shit came before, alright, so you do the math. Which one came first? The concept simply follows the standard Super Mario Bros. Plot of Mario and Luigi going to rescue Princess Peach from the Lord of Darkness, King Koopa. If you were just spoiled, then I'm genuinely sorry, but I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, you have 30 years to catch up on this shit. The moderate success of this film then continued to spark a number of video game-based films, TV series, and OVAs, including some of the most well-known gaming franchises of all time, like Dragon Quest, Mega Man, Final Fantasy, and yes, the Blue Blur himself, Sonic the Hedgehog, among many others. While all of these franchises are great individually, and the anime series that was spawned from them were all fun and dandy, there really wasn't much variety within the frames of the animation from their pixelated counterparts. It could be said that the earlier video game to anime adaptations were more of a reimagining or a retelling of these stories from video game onto the big screen. Other than the fact that it was fully animated with those sick 2D graphics at the time, there really wasn't much variety within the narrative or the way that that narrative was presented. It wasn't until the year 1997 that the world wasn't introduced to what is now inarguably considered one of the greatest and most successful video game to anime based adaptations we'd ever seen. The original Pokemon series. The biggest thing that set the Pokemon anime apart from all of these other video game based adaptations was that it was based off a game with varying gameplay and story. Super Mario Bros. Is usually pretty cut and dry with the way you advance its quote-unquote story. But in Pokemon, you have an infinite amount of choices with what Pokemon to catch, as well as the underlying Pokemon universe and countless amounts of lore that has an infinite amount of room to grow and expand. I think this is what made the original Pokemon anime so successful, because almost everything about every episode was new and unique, even to those who were completely versed in the original game franchise. It was familiar content being told and presented in a completely new way, with new narratives that were original to the anime only. And I think that's why the Pokemon anime was successful purely for that reason alone. Because I genuinely don't see the reason to adapt a video game to an anime when the video game is based on gameplay alone. And when I say completely gameplay based, I obviously don't mean that there is just void of any story. I mean, the main pulling power of that game is because of its gameplay rather than its story. Like, people want to play all of these Super Mario Bros. Games because the gameplay is awesome, not because they care about the story. Let's use a more recent example with the newly adapted RPG Maker game, Angels of Death. Now, I love RPG Maker games, don't get me wrong, and I played the entire Angels of Death game over on my Twitch, shameless plug, wink wink. And what I can say from playing the game in its entirety, the thing that makes the story so fantastic in Angels of Death is because you get to experience and play the story rather than just watching the story. And that's one of the biggest criticisms that I see from fans about the anime adaptations, that it feels like they're watching a Let's Play rather than it feeling like they're watching an actual anime. Because the story is pretty linear, there isn't much room for exploration when it comes to a new medium like anime, besides from the added voice acting, animation, sound effects, and overall tone and atmosphere that comes with an animated piece of work, of course. If people can just watch a Let's Play of the game to fully experience the same things they feel from its anime counterpart, then what's the point of the anime existing? The same thing can be said for the absolutely unfortunately created, every fan wants to forget about, Persona 5 the animation series. It just ended up being a collection of all of the cutscenes from the game with somehow worse graphics and animation than the game. The thing is, while Persona 5 did have a compelling story that many longtime fans and newcomers were into, the biggest thing that sold the game was not its story, but its epically infinite gameplay. It was the fact that you could choose to do literally anything you wanted to do every day that made the game have such a high replay value and get players engaged in its story. And I can vouch for this, like I sunk like 500 plus hours into that game because I wanted to get all of the girl endings, alright? I wanted to see which waifu was the best waifu. The answer was Hifumi. And yes, I have no life, shut up. The player was able to create the story they chose to follow from their own actions. And to completely take that away in the form of an anime adaptation with a linear narrative is pretty goddamn pointless, don't you think? And there are plenty more video game-based anime that have kind of fallen into this shithole when it comes to adapting its story onto the big screen. Look at the Corpse Party Tortured Soul anime or the Danganronpa series. While both these series do have great gameplay and great stories, it fails in the similar way that Persona 5 did. These are games that tell the story through its gameplay and not just solely a story-based game. You don't just see and listen to the story, you play the story. And that's really what makes all of these kinds of series really difficult to adapt, because you're taking away this interactive element and you're basically left with nothing new. But while I say that, not all gameplay-based games to anime are terrible. I mean, look at the recent Netflix Castlevania series. Even with a short run of just 4 episodes, the anime managed to not only bring elements of the original game into a modern twist, but also provide those who had never played the original games with something completely new and refreshing to watch. It also managed to bring us not only a new style and look with its surprisingly decent Western production, but also showed us that an adaptation of a game doesn't always have to be completely based off of that game to a T. Look, I loved playing all of the Castlevania games, like Castlevania 1 to 4, fucking amazing, except for Castlevania 2. And even as a massive Castlevania fan, watching the Castlevania anime was just so refreshing. It reminded me of the first time I ever watched the Pokemon anime. Like, I had already sunken my teeth into the gaming series, and then when I saw it on the big screen for the first time, it was like, oh my god, this is so familiar, yet everything's so new! It was exciting, and that kind of excitement is what makes the Castlevania anime series just so great. And I think, just on a personal note, it might also be because, you know, it's like a post-apocalyptic dark fantasy story, you know, similar to Berserk and Claymore, and those I absolutely fuck with. Please give us more Netflix, I need it. Now, some of the more attentive viewers of mine right now may be screaming at your screen saying, "But Joey, you're forgetting about all of the visual novel adaptations." And don't worry, my dudes, I haven't forgotten about those. I mean, how could I? It's interesting because concerning visual novels in this particular discussion, we first have to ask the question, are visual novels even considered games? Which, luckily for you guys, I've already done a video on, so why don't you go check out that video first and then come back to me to get the bigger picture. But if you've already seen that video, thank you, and let's move on. As I explained in that Are Visual Novels Even Considered Games video, I've explained that visual novels are considered narratological games rather than ludological games. In other words, they are more story-based than they are gameplay-based. And I think it's because of that narratological nature that makes visual novels just that little bit easier to adapt into anime format rather than all of these ludological games that I explained earlier in the video. Not to mention the fact that many visual novels have multiple branches in in which the story can diverge into depending on how the player selects their gameplay. It leaves plenty of space for anime directors and writers to experiment with the anime adaptation's narrative streamline. They can select the most popular ending to adapt like they did with the Shuffle adaptation. They can select all the possible endings like they did with the entire Fate series. Or they can absolutely troll the shit out of fans and viewers by picking the most controversial one like they did in School Days. I swear to God, the directors and writers must just be laughing back in their chairs, pissing themselves at how salty the internet was 11 years ago, and I do not blame them. In my opinion, if you can stick to the game's original story and style, while also giving us something new and refreshing, either from its more adapted story or just from the nature of the medium of anime, then I would say that that is a good video game to anime adaptation. For example, I have gone on record many times to say that Clannad is one of my favorite visual novels of all time, and it's just one of my favorite video game to anime adaptations of all time. And for good reason. The anime series managed to take a 200+ hour long story full of so many minute little details and condense it nicely into 48 episodes without it feeling rushed or cut or watered down from its original story. Not only that, but the anime geniusly incorporated music and voice actors that were used in the original game to pertain to its authenticity for fans of the game. Now granted, Clannad was not the first game to anime adaptation to achieve this, but it certainly is one of the most powerful and effective examples of its type. We all know how powerful musical cues can be, and this just works perfectly with the nature of the story that is Clannad. Having watched the anime and played the game from start to finish, both versions of the story gave me something new and unique to take out of, thanks to in no small part the different strengths that each medium brings to the table for the viewers. And in my opinion, if an anime adaptation of a video game cannot achieve something like that, then I just don't think there is any point to adapt it in the first place. But alas, with the current trend that is going on right now, or has been going on for the last couple of years I should say, we're most definitely going to see a lot more video game to anime adaptations regardless of its quality. I mean, think about how many mobile games have been adapted into an anime. Like, I can just put some on the screen right now, and those are only just a few that came out in the last 10 years or so. But not all is bleak. Luckily, as we do get more and more different video game to anime adaptations from different types of consoles, like, you know, the RPG Maker style, the mobile game style, like, we will also be able to see, hopefully, more experimentations when it comes to adaptations, as more directors and writers will start to look out for those kinds of places to adapt their next anime. For example, earlier this year, it was announced that the ultra popular and basically now legendary status RPG Maker game To the Moon was going to get an anime film adaptation. Unlike Angels of Death, To the Moon is heavily narratological, and yes, people can argue and say that, oh, you also have to experience To the Moon, much like you experience Angels of Death. I feel that a story like To the Moon is definitely a lot more enjoyable just from a third-person perspective. Like, I can sit down and watch a Let's Play of To the Moon and feel the same way that I felt when I played To the Moon. And I think it's a simple reason like that, that I feel To the Moon is just going to be a much better contender for a good anime adaptation. Now, granted, I have no idea if To the Moon is going to be a good movie right now. Like, they just announced it at the time of this recording. There is basically little to no information about this movie whatsoever, so I just have to fucking hope and pray that my boy Kangao will pull through it and give us something worth celebrating. But hey, if our analysis and discussion in this video about video game to anime based adaptations is somewhat correct or somewhat close to the truth, then hey, we probably will be getting something pretty interesting. I hope, otherwise this video is really not going to be convincing. But hey, at the end of the day, that's just how I see it, and I know everybody thinks differently about every topic that I discuss, so I definitely want you guys to let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. What do you think are some of the best video game to anime adaptations, and why? Do you think there is some kind of quantifiable rhyme or reason as to what makes a good video game to anime based adaptation, or what makes a video game suitable for an anime adaptation? Or do you think it just lies down to the raw talent of the director or producer or writer? You can let me know in the comments below, or if you're free and I'm free to do it, then you can check me out and let me know your opinions while I'm streaming on Twitch. we do tend to get into a lot of anime discussion and, you know, video game discussion and stuff like that while I'm streaming on Twitch. You know, I stream all sorts of different games. I recently streamed IRL, which was really interesting. And I know a lot of you guys miss my Let's Plays, but don't worry, I do them all on Twitch now, so make sure to catch me on my next stream and let me know all your thoughts and opinions and stuff like that in the chat. You'll get direct feedback, unlike the YouTube comments. Click the link in the description below, give me a follow over there, and yeah, hopefully you can catch me on the next stream. And don't worry, some of the Let's Plays that I do end up on my second channel, which I will be, again, reviving as of this year. I know we've been very on and off with this second channel, but don't worry, this motherfucker's coming back from the grave. So if you haven't subscribed to my second channel, Joey, then make sure to also do that. Links in the description below. And if you don't want to do any of that, then you can just let me know on Twitter. That's usually the best place to do it. So make sure to do that if you haven't. If you haven't, then what are you doing? I don't like you. I'm just kidding. I love you, but please follow me on Twitter. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. As always, like and favorite if you enjoyed, subscribe for more anime banner, and I'll see you guys in the next video of whatever I make. Keep watching anime. Ciao man!